Natural sciences were very dominant, they began, social sciences came later on. When natural scientists started their work in Renaissance period, they had to prove that everything is not governed by the God, it's not ordained. As a human being, you can study what is existing. You can try to make a change and better it. That was the whole revolution that took place in the European society. And so what was the idea? That you as an elite who is highly educated can study the physical phenomenon and try to make a sense out of it. When social scientists started, they imported the same methodology into social science, that we can also study human beings and find out how their institutions are functioning and can work out a way of changing it, that we do certain things and it will change. And that's how you will find that what is called social science paradigm, the objectivity, that you observe the phenomenon, find out the causal relationship, and find out a way of intervening in it so that you can really master the nature. The same way, the social sciences started with an idea that you can master the society by learning and understanding the society, by learning it in a most unbiased and what I would say objective manner as possible. So that is how they brought it there. And once that comes, who can change the society? The state. And 19th century was the time when the industrial revolution was in the peak. Large number of people were being thrown out of the rural areas, and they were coming to the urban areas and living in ghettos in most of the European cities. Those who have read Charles Dickens would know, or La Miserable will know that what kind of society that was existing at that time. And the social scientists wanted to study, find out. So the sociology as a discipline evolves out of the study of poor, because they wanted to see about the poverty, their problems, and how states can do something in order to either control them or change their life. The state has always two objectives. When they say that they are want to do good for you, they also want to control you, because both of these things normally go together as far as the state is concerned. And state and social sciences have a very, very close relationship, because most of the information that you come out with, and when you are doing survey, you normally tell the people that yes, there is no tangible benefit for you, but we will submit it to the government or we will publish it, and somebody will pick it up and policy will change and your life will be better. So what ultimately we are telling is that social scientists are helping the state to do something for you, and that's how they are very connected. So sociology develops out of that. The state's concern that this poor should not become rebellion. They should be channelized in such a manner that life should be made better, so that there is a less and less political risk coming out of it. With our liberalization policy also, most of the time this is what is being talked about. Do something for the poor, otherwise you will lose election, or there will be more Naxalites around. So something needs to be done. So you have wealth, but at the same time share it little bit. And so our Prime Minister had to make appeals to the CEOs and all that have less salary, so that some other people can also get little bit. Anthropology. That was also time when time of what is called colonial time, where the European imperialist powers had captured much of the underdeveloped world today, and they were exploiting them. But when you capture, like say India was ruled by British, not by having hundreds of thousands of troops stationed in India, only a few thousand troops were stationed here. The rest of the thing was done by our own people. How was it done? How did British find out, who had no idea of what India was, to govern it? That was the anthropology. The initial anthropologists in India all were administrators of the imperial power. They had a great observation power. They learned about the society, how the society was formed, how it was interacting. And so they provided great data to the empire to tell that how they can self-govern without fighting against you, and how you can co-opt in your structure. The social anthropology comes with that. It has also another thing, that anthropology which was very foundational, which also looked at the early life, the life of the indigenous people, the tribals, in order to understand how society evolved or the social institutions evolved. They want to find out how family evolved, how various customs evolved. So, there were also those who were not directly connected to the imperialist power, but they also thought that they were very civilized and there are uncivilized people who need to be studied. Most of us are like that. We do research, we sit in metropolitan cities, we are highly educated, we are elite. We go around and we know that there are people in slums, people in villages, and we want to study them in order to find some way out of it. If you look at the larger stage as it was happening in 19th century, it had a kind of a poetical connection, and then I think we have to do our own introspection, that how are we, if not directly and consciously, but in some way, indirectly or unconsciously getting connected to the larger structure of which we are a part. That's very, very important. The psychology also had a lot of ethical problems, because psychologists, and I think there is the only discipline in social sciences perhaps, which has laboratories, where they carry out experiments in laboratories, and they use their students to do it. And so it became very, very controversial. I will come to some of the experiments on that. Oftentimes we are told that being medical professionals, we are all very enlightened people. And so we try to self-regulate ourselves through ethics. But it's not our enlightenment that comes from our heart, from within. It actually comes from outside. If you look at history, you will find that we became very aware of ethics because somebody on whom we were doing experiment protested. And in social sciences, it was much more. When you are working only with people, they are not substances, they are human beings. They talk back. Till they are uneducated and they are under sway of you, you go there and they give you information. But if you are sitting at the airport and somebody comes with a survey form and says that please give me half an hour because your flight is late, half an hour, to answer this questionnaire, and more often than not, will tell that person to, get lost. I have no time. I have my laptop to look at, I have my book to read or something like that. We don't do it. We talk back. Or if we start asking questions, we also start asking questions to that person. Anybody in the rural area will not ask me, what is my intention of doing research. They will say, oh, what is for me in it? But they will not ask, why are you doing all this stuff? Why don't you do something better? They will not ask, but we will be asking. So as people become more educated, they become more aware, they start asking questions there. They stop giving information. I give you an anecdote. I was in US about 8 years back, and the census of US was coming up. And I went for a small center of Indians in New Jersey. All these Indians periodically meet. And in that meeting, I was working at the time on domestic violence quite a lot, and so I had gone for that purpose. But there was a woman who came from the census department. And she was urging the Indians sitting there that please ensure that all Indians, irrespective of their status, even if they are illegal immigrants, ask them to provide information. And so that we can fight with the government and get more welfare out of the government. And all those people who were sitting there were quite skeptical. They said, why should we do it? Suppose we do it, what happened in Reagan time? They said there are too many people on welfare. Right? So they said, there are people who are lazy, people who have come here illegally. Why should we spend our money on it? Instead of getting good, we will have more right-wing people coming in power simply because we will be identified as a problem here. We don't want to give information. But there was a dialogue that I witnessed, was an eye-opener for me, that people were asking questions even to the census, which has a law saying that information that is collected there will never be utilized against any person, neither for income tax purpose nor for anything else. There is a law and protecting the entire information. And yet, people were very skeptical. Look at our, Indian minorities. Why should they give data if after every census, there is going to be a major controversy about who is reproducing more? Hindus or Muslims or Christians or somebody else or something like that, or about caste, which caste is reproducing more than others. And if that is going to lead to major political campaigns to target those people, then why should they provide information? So this is what happened in 1960s when there was a strong black movement in USA. You must have heard about Martin Luther and all the Beck movement, and that was the dissidence that forced them to look at it. And the rights consciousness, as I was telling you, becoming more and more popular, people knowing about their rights. This is about, as I was saying, it is this scandals, this talking back, that leads to the development of guidelines. Look at Helsinki Declaration, 4 or 5 versions of it, and you will find that how the rights have developed. You don't have to just look at how ethics have developed. It has a very close component to ethics is rights, that it is your duty to respect somebody's rights. And once you recognize it, it starts getting into your ethical guideline. So most of the ethical guidelines have this history of injustices done in the past. Most of the controversy also have some kind of human rights violations involved in it. You have heard about Tuskegee and all. Now let's look at what happened in social sciences. Involvement in intelligence gathering. Social science is getting involved in that. You may find very, very problematic. But who is manning all our rows and the other departments where people are sitting there? Most of them are social scientists. They have done their masters in social sciences and gone into various kind of intelligence agencies. But here it became very, very important because in the First World War, there were some well-known anthropologists who became spies for the Allies. And Frank Bohr, who was a father of the American anthropology, in 1920 raised it in the anthropological conference, this question that these are the 4 people who have worked as spies for the government during the First World War. He was put down by the association. I mean, he was a towering figure at the time, at the end of his career. Everybody respected him so much. But as it happens in every profession, if you raise an uncomfortable question, normally the entire profession comes down heavily on them, and he was shut up. In 2000, the Nation carried an article because the information was declassified, and somebody went back to see whether Frank Bohr was saying was right or not, and he found that not only those 4 anthropologists were spies in First World War, but since they got away with it, they continued to be spies in the Second World War too. So this was a very, very interesting thing to happen, that if you are Vietnam War, what was the anthropologists doing there? Doing study of villages. But the data were showing that which are the villages of Viet Cong and which are the which were supporting the official government. And the bombing had a pattern which was corresponding to that. That those villages which were stronghold of Viet Cong were really bombed much more heavily than the others. And the data came from social scientists. So it was very, very important. I mean, tomorrow you work, say, in Bastar, Jharkhand, Naxalite movement is going on. You work in Kashmir, you work in Northeast where insurgencies are there. As a social scientist, you must have looked at the issue of confidentiality and all. What level of confidentiality you must provide in order to ensure that the research that you are doing is not misused by the state. But if you yourself collude with the state, that you go there as a researcher and provide the data deliberately to the state in order to take action in the name of, say, nationalism, patriotism, that I am a very patriotic researcher. Normally, to say that researcher should not look at patriotism is in this time. In my time, in 70s, there was no problem saying it. But this time is totally different. But as a researcher, we don't have that kind of obligation. We have obligation to the subjects. And here, that was not kept. Psychologists in military, they work, to ensure that the soldiers who really get breakdown, they are brought back to the fighting spirit. All of us are fed by Bollywood all the time saying that, our Jawans, they are ready to fight and they have got so much of all those things. But if you read the biographies of those people who fought, they will tell you that at the time of real war, they were shit scared. In their bunkers, there are more people breaking down psychologically than others. So in the First World War, psychologists were called upon to help out the military. And you are helping out somebody to revive and go and kill somebody else. I mean, that is another ethical issue. And this was the phase when all this qualitative research methodology evolved. You know about the focus group discussion. What is the origin of focus group discussion? Psychologists in military. They realized that you can't do it with one soldier at a time. You have to have a group therapy, group support system, and all those things are very, very important. And so focus group discussion emerged at that time. Project Camelot was another one in mid-60s, very, very famous. There are several books written on this subject. And if you get time, read it. This is a project where studying political conflict. The America's War Department decided to give money to the American university to do study of conflict, political conflict in Latin American countries. Latin America was a real up in arms in 1960s and 70s after Cuban Revolution. And a year after, this was the first multi-million-dollar social science research project in the history of humanity. Thereafter, many have come, but this was the first one. So from where you take money becomes very important. In Chile, a professor did the whistleblowing and told them that, see, they want to find out and they want to manage the conflict. And so there were protests in the street. There was a diplomatic